My husband and I, 54, set up college funds for each of our children before birth. We've been quite lucky and now each account can pay for 4 years of a private college easily. The issue is with our eldest, 24 female, let's call her Natasha. She's married to her wife, Miriam, a nice girl with no ambition whatsoever. We split the cost of the wedding with her parents. Miriam has a master's, but her job is something with little kids on the spectrum and it's only part-time. She also has a condition that I don't want to get into too much here that makes her more burdensome. We paid for Natasha's college out of pocket, reasoning we could save the college fund for grandkids, etc. She first got a job when she graduated but wanted to go to grad school. We said, okay, we will pay for your grad school if you study hard and be responsible. Recently, the girls started making noises about taking foster children into their home, an apartment close to campus that we pay for. We said that's probably not a good idea, but it just went in one ear and out the other. Natasha texted the other day saying that her tuition for the spring semester is due, and after discussing it with her father, I asked if she was still planning on taking in foster kids. She replied they were almost done with the process and could have their home open in as little as a month. At that point, I texted a calm and measured paragraph explaining that we couldn't support them. The whole point of paying for everything is so Natasha wouldn't have to work, not so she could be distracted and deal with someone else's kids. It would be completely different if one of them had their own baby, and I told them as much, and I know the state more or less reimburses foster parents for what they spend on the kids. My daughter-in-law Miriam called me and it was kind of awkward. I explained my reasoning and she said okay. She said Natasha's grades probably aren't going to go down at all from having a kid in the house, and I said that would be nice, but you don't know that for sure. I said there were plenty of other ways they could do community service together, even with Miriam's condition. She agreed there are other avenues. The issue from where I'm standing is that I don't think she should be studying and doing 24/7 charity work simultaneously. None of my other kids ever had control over their education funds, but I got their rent, tuition and extras paid every semester. The others honestly were always much more respectful of our generosity. They joined social clubs, hung out with families, and presented a very good image. Natasha, on the other hand, often tries to present a bad image, driving Miriam's ugly car when we offer to get her a new one, old clothes, her hair is not done, etc. We even offered them to live in a nice area while Natasha studies, but they insisted on the cheapest apartment possible. They even wanted to have a very small wedding, which would have been disrespectful to many family members not invited, but fortunately we compromised on that one and everyone was happy. Anyway, my friends all have different opinions. Some don't understand why Natasha doesn't have access to her college funds since she's over 21, but all I can say is she just doesn't. One thinks I'm an idiot because Natasha's already done 1 month of work for the semester, and they already have the furniture for the child set up. So, am I the idiot? OP, what's the real issue here? That your daughter is a lesbian? That her wife works with autistic children? That her wife has a medical condition you consider burdensome? That they don't want luxury cars and a fancy wedding? That they want to foster children instead of having biological ones? Because it feels like you don't support your daughter's choices and are digging for excuses to break your promise to pay for her education. You are the idiot, OP. I disagree. This isn't about the daughter's choices. This couple, who are not even supporting themselves, are talking about bringing in kids who already have their own problems, trauma from being taken away from their families just to start, and cannot even support themselves. There is no shame in growing up poor. I grew up in a family with parents who had 5 children who couldn't really afford to have us. Children need support, and if they want to be parents, they should provide the support, not the grandparents. I'm with you, what an awful take. Why would OP continue to pay for her adult daughter's lifestyle? Is OP going to be expected to support the foster kids too? The daughter doesn't even pay for her own rent and probably doesn't have the means to, which means she doesn't have a way to support those foster kids beyond the check the state sends. It sounds like Miriam is bored and looking for something to do with herself. She should be working more and contributing to the costs of rent. Oh, you are the idiot, OP. You don't care if they have kids. You just don't want them to have foster kids. You're all about the image. You call it charity while admitting the state pays for out-of-pocket costs. Methinks there is so much more to this. What if they adopt? What if they adopt a child who's not white? You can do with your money what you will, but to leave your child in debt because you changed the rules is an awful move. I got married in July. My parents flew in for the wedding. We've been engaged almost a year at that point, not that it should matter. My dad asked me if my wife, then fiancée, was pregnant. She was, but I said no. I found the question irrelevant and irritating. My daughter was recently born, and my dad brought up that conversation after the initial excitement. Specifically, he said, "So she was pregnant at the wedding?" I got annoyed and asked why it mattered. He said he was disappointed that I lied. I said it was a stupid question to begin with. He said, "What time is the 2 p.m. parade?" is a stupid question, but I wouldn't tell someone it was 3 p.m. I told him it was rude to ask something about pregnancy. He said, "Well then, why not say that? Why lie? Why not just say it was a rude question?" I told him I was done with the conversation. My brother thinks I'm an idiot because I know our dad is different and gets fixated on things, and lying is one of those things. But it was a rude question. Ask a stupid question and get a stupid answer, I always say. Am I the idiot? Geez, you never ask if a woman is pregnant, let alone on a wedding day. Not the idiot. Lying isn't great, but pregnancy is allowed to be personal. The best response I ever found for nosy questions: "Why are you asking?" And to their lame follow-up justification, I looked puzzled and asked, "Yeah, but why is that any concern of yours?" Usually folks slink away and I don't have to escalate to DEFCON number 3. Don't you think that's a very intrusive question to be asking me? Agree. She was like 2 months pregnant at the time? Why would they even feel the need to ask about that? That sounds like they didn't approve of the wedding and thought you wanted to do this for reasons other than love. Clearly not because she was showing at the time. You decided to get married way before she got pregnant. Most people don't tell other people they're pregnant until way later than 2 months. Yes, that can include close family members. Yeah, the fiancé's pregnancy was none of the father's business. Although I'm guessing he saw her avoiding alcohol. I was plied with so much on my wedding day. Still, none of his damn business, though. People have so many reasons for not wanting to drink. But the second a woman, 1, declines alcohol at any event, or 2, dares to have any nausea, you just know it will be pregnant time by busybodies. Your brother is an enabler and your dad is old enough to understand that sometimes he needs to let it go. However, he should also learn that he's not entitled to information on other people's lives and shouldn't get upset when he's lied to when asking inappropriate questions. Pregnancy is not inquired about. It is something that is announced. For context, I'm dairy intolerant. It makes me incredibly sick. So I, female 24, have been dating this guy James, 27, for 6 months now. We live in California, he moved here for a job and I've just always lived here, whereas his parents live in Missouri, so I've never really had a chance to meet them properly. About a week ago, James told me he was going up to Missouri for a few days to visit his parents and asked me if I wanted to come along and meet them, which of course I said yes to, as I naturally wanted to meet his parents in person. So we arrived here yesterday and I'd made it clear to James to inform his parents that I'm dairy intolerant, and he reassured me that he'd told them and they knew, so I assumed there was no issue there at all. So onto the issue here. His mom was in the kitchen all day yesterday preparing a meal that smelled amazing. I asked her what the dish was and she told me it was a chicken korma curry. I assumed that she'd substituted the dairy ingredients, i.e. yogurt and cream, with something else, so I thought nothing of it. Come time to eat, she presented me with the dish and it looked and smelled amazing. I asked her for confirmation if it was dairy-free and she looked at me as if I was some alien and asked why on earth a chicken korma would be dairy-free. I told her I was intolerant and she started getting extremely angry, saying that I should have told her earlier and she didn't have anything else she could make for me. James chimed in saying he did tell her about my dairy intolerance, but then turned on me, saying that it wasn't that bad and that I should just eat it. I felt really backed into a corner, so I started crying, saying I'm sorry but I can't eat this, and then I left and booked myself into a nearby motel. James keeps calling me, saying how upset his mom and dad are and saying how I disrespected his mom by not at least trying her meal. I feel really upset and maybe I should have just eaten a few bites and sucked it up. The intolerance isn't so severe that I'd end up in the hospital, but then again, I'd rather not have raging pain and long bathroom breaks. Also, I feel like I shouldn't have just stormed out like that. So, am I the idiot? Honey, you just learned that your boyfriend lied to you about telling her, and he would rather you be in horrific pain and discomfort than admit the truth. This boy doesn't care about you. This is your first red flag, and you need to pay attention to it. Leave him. Being flexible can be a great virtue, but the threshold isn't, "This probably won't put me in the hospital." This is not about compromise. He shouldn't be in your life if he thinks you need to compromise your physical health for him or his mother's feelings. All three of them disrespected you. Do you want to be in pain and discomfort all night? Ignoring that would be embarrassing for you. That, and has she never heard of coconut milk for curry? Seriously, I wouldn't still be dating this guy. While leaving might have been dramatic, his reaction is worse. James should have stuck up for you. Instead, he threw you under the bus. Regarding his family, it's up to him to defend you and set boundaries for you, now and into the future, as it only gets harder the longer you're together. This boy can't even be on your side regarding this kind of thing. He will never be on your side, and Mummy's feelings will always trump your needs. Update: Am I the idiot for leaving when I refused to eat my boyfriend's mom's food? Thank you for all your responses. All of you have been nice, and I appreciate the advice. A few of you have mentioned that it was a bit over-dramatic of me to storm out instead of trying to smooth things over, which I completely agree with. It's just for me, personally, I don't do well with confrontation, and my fight-or-flight response tends to kick in when presented with situations like this. So, yeah, I do regret the way I responded, but unfortunately, I can't take it back now. So I did finally respond to my boyfriend's calls. He was apologetic and came by my motel room to see if I was okay. However, as soon as he got here, he started ranting at me again about his mother and her hurt feelings. I told him to leave, and I plan on getting a flight back from Missouri to Cali. Unfortunately, it's a $100 flight and takes a chunk out of my budget. However, I'm feeling really uncomfortable in this situation and want to be alone. And clarify something, I couldn't tell his mother beforehand because I'd never met her. Therefore, I had no way of contacting her except through James. Before we arrived, she was already in the kitchen cooking the meal, so I couldn't have told her before she started cooking either. There really was no way I could have done anything. I just took James's word that he'd told her. We haven't separated yet. I'm leaving to go home this morning. It's 3 a.m. right now, and my flight is at 6 a.m., so I'm awake at this horrible hour. I don't know if boyfriend will come back early, but if he doesn't, he returns on Monday, and then I'll have to talk things through with him and decide if this relationship is even worth it. I am a 23 female grad student. My sister, Christina, 25, recently vacationed with her boyfriend. She gave me the keys to her apartment because she trusts me. At least she used to trust me, and because the Wi-Fi at my apartment can sometimes get slow while her internet is better. So I was very grateful for her letting me use her place. So eventually my Wi-Fi did freeze up, so I made myself comfortable at Chris's place. I was especially stressed out that day because my experiment wasn't going well, so I lit a smoke in her apartment. After finishing, I assumed that I'd sufficiently put the cigarette out, and I left it on a stack of papers lying on Christina's bed. After a while, I smelled smoke, and I turned around and saw that the papers and her bed were nearly burning. I started to panic, and I hastily put it out before there was a fire. Unfortunately, Chris's bed was ruined and the papers were destroyed. So Chris returned, and she found out I'd accidentally ruined her bed and the stack of papers lying on top of it. She gets so angry at me, firstly because of what I did, but admittedly also because I was too scared to tell her what happened before she found out by herself. I broke down crying in front of her, and I told her that I felt so awful about it and I hadn't been able to light a cigarette ever since that night. She told me to stop crying and stop feeling sorry for myself, and that those papers were really important. I asked her why she didn't keep them in a safe drawer, but then she just told me to shut up. She knew I didn't mean to be so negligent, but she still hasn't forgiven me and swore never to let me freely enter her apartment again. It hurts me deeply. Am I the idiot? So let me get this straight. You light up a cigarette in her home. When you finish, you lay it on a stack of papers. Instead of tossing it, it catches fire, you ruin her bed, and you don't tell her? Yeah, you are the idiot. Oh, and then you get upset with her for not putting her papers in a safer spot? Double, you are the idiot. You destroyed things in her apartment, didn't tell her about it, and then when confronted, blamed her for the location of her items in her home? You were negligent and irresponsible. Lucky it wasn't worse, in someone else's home, and you should be bending over backward to make it right, not blaming them in any way for your screw-up. Are you seriously questioning if you're wrong? That's hilarious, LOL. Yeah, why were you even in her bedroom to begin with? Why were you smoking in her home? How have you managed to get to the age of 23 as a grad student and not figure out how to put out a cigarette properly? Did you offer to buy a new bed and linens for her? Geez, you are utterly negligent and don't care about anything but yourself. Or you are a moron and can't be trusted in any way. Furthermore, you show no accountability for your actions. My husband had his daughter later in life, so when I entered the picture I was quite older with no children of my own, and as such have not kept up with many current trends and slang. My stepdaughter, let's call her Mary, and I got along fine when she was younger, but things have been more difficult as she entered her teenage years. We're pretty close because her birth mother isn't in the picture, and I've practically raised her whole life. She calls me Mom. The issue is that recently she's been using a lot of slang around me to embarrass me in front of others. To be clear, I have no problem with using slang, social media, etc. It's a natural thing for people to use when communicating with each other. My problem is that I don't understand the context behind the words, and I tried to do some research, but it's not the same as actually living and understanding it. For example, she recently asked me a question during our carpool using a term I didn't understand, and she and her friends laughed at the situation. I later discovered that the joke or reference she was making was offensive, and it greatly embarrassed me. I tried to talk to her, and her father has tried to talk to her, but to no avail. The issue is that recently I was carpooling again, and she tried to pull a joke on me again. I ended up just completely ignoring her when she asked me a question. The car ended up getting awkward for the rest of the ride. When we got home, Mary blew up and said I embarrassed her in front of her friends. My husband says I was petty for not playing along or addressing the issue, but I would have lost either way, i.e. admonishing her in front of her friends versus ignoring the question. I'm also frustrated because I've already addressed the situation countless times. Either way, things are tense at home, and now I'm really wondering if I was the idiot. Not the idiot. You embarrassed her by not playing along with her joke, which the joke is seeing how clueless OP is. I think you're fine to tell Mary that this is how you will respond to rude questions in the future, and if that is not acceptable, then the solution is not to give rides to her friends. To quote Gabriel Iglesias, embarrassing a child is the best ammunition you have against a child that's legal. She's intentionally creating situations that you don't appreciate to have an inside joke with her friends, and she got mad that you didn't play along. Don't be sad, she's just an immature teenager doing immature things. And you did nothing wrong by ignoring an obvious bait. She will learn to entertain herself and her friends, but that doesn't come at the expense of others. It greatly embarrassed me. You are the idiot, OP. Kids and slang should not get this kind of reaction from you, so let it go and stop taking it so personally. I don't know all the kids' slang these days. I don't care. Why on God's green earth are you entering into this with a teenager? Just move on and live your life. These kids are getting the best of you because you're too sensitive. Also, the fact that you felt it important to tell us that she's your stepdaughter and not your real daughter is enough background.